Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. Imagine a software engineer named Sarah. Sarah graduated from a top university with a degree in computer science in 2005. She learned C++, Java, and the fundamental architecture of databases. She was a good student. She had the knowledge stored in her head. Now, flash forward to today. If Sarah tried to do her job relying only on what she learned in college, she would be unemployable. The languages have changed, the frameworks have evolved, and the entire concept of cloud computing didn't even exist in her textbooks. So how does Sarah do her job? She doesn't sit in a room and think really hard until the answer comes. She Googles it. She checks Stack Overflow. She pings a colleague on Slack. She watches a YouTube tutorial on a new API. She reads a blog post from a developer in India she has never met. Sarah's competence doesn't come from what she knows, what is stored inside her skull. Her competence comes from her ability to connect to a network of information that lives outside of her. This is the reality of the 21st century, and this is the reality that gave birth to Connectivism, the first true learning theory of the digital age. For the last 100 years, educational theories, behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism all agreed on one thing: learning happens inside the person. They argued about whether it was a habit, a computer process, or a construction, but the location was always the individual mind. Connectivism is radical because it says, you are wrong. Learning happens outside the person too. It argues that in a world where information is exploding and changing every day, knowing something is less important than knowing where to find something. It claims that the pipes are more important than the water flowing through them. It fundamentally shifts the goal of education from filling the bucket to building the network. To understand why we need connectivism, we have to look at the environment we live in. In the past, knowledge was scarce and slow. If you were a doctor in 1950, the medical knowledge you learned in school would likely stay true for most of your career. New discoveries happened, but they trickled down slowly through journals and conferences. The half-life of knowledge, the amount of time it takes for half of the knowledge in a field to become obsolete, was measured in decades. Today, the half-life of knowledge is shrinking rapidly. In some technical fields, it's measured in months. The educational theorist George Siemens, who is essentially the father of connectivism, looked at this situation in 2004 and realized that our old models were broken. Is too slow and rigid for a complex world. Cognitivism, the brain as a computer, assumes the information is stable enough to be processed and stored. Constructivism, building meaning, is great, but it assumes the individual can experience enough of the world to build a complete picture. Siemens argued that we have moved into an era of chaos. There is simply too much information for any one human being to process, let alone learn. We are drinking from a fire hose. If you try to learn everything you need to know to be an expert today, you will fail. The sheer volume of data overwhelms the cognitive capacity of the human brain. So what do? We offload. We stop trying to store everything in our heads. Instead, we store it in our network. We rely on databases, search engines, and other people to hold the information for us. We treat the internet not just as a library, but as an extension of our own cognitive process. This is the central thesis of connectivism. Learning is the process of connecting specialized nodes or information sources. Connectivism borrows its language heavily from network theory and computer science. To see the world like a connectivist, you have to stop seeing students and teachers and start seeing nodes and links. The node. A node is anything that can hold information. Obviously, a person is a node. Your teacher, your classmate, your friend. But, and this is controversial, non-human things are also nodes. A website is a node. A database is a node. A book is a node. An AI algorithm is a node. Any point that contains data is a node in the network. The link is the connection between two nodes. When you talk to a friend, you create a link. When you follow someone on Twitter, you create a link. When you subscribe to a YouTube channel or bookmark a blog, you create a link. In this view, knowledge isn't a thing you possess. Knowledge is the network itself. Imagine a constellation of stars. The knowledge isn't in the single star, it's in the pattern, the lines drawn between them that form the shape of the Big Dipper. Therefore, the goal of a learner is not to memorize the content of every node. That's impossible. The goal is to build a robust, diverse network of connections so that when you do need an answer, you can get to it. This leads to a massive shift in priority. In a traditional class, the priority is content. You must know these 50 facts about the Civil War. In a connectivist environment, the priority is currency, how up-to-date the info is, and capacity. As Siemens famously put it, the pipe is more important than the content within the pipe. Why? Because the content changes. The fact you learned yesterday might be wrong tomorrow. But if you have a healthy pipe, a connection to an expert or a live database, you will be updated instantly when the change happens. If you memorize the content but cut the connection, you are obsolete. George Siemens and his colleague Stephen Downes laid out specific principles that define this theory. These aren't just academic rules. They are a survival guide for the modern learner. 1. Learning and knowledge rest in diversity of opinions. If everyone in your network thinks exactly like you, you aren't learning. You're in an echo chamber. A healthy neural network connects different parts of the brain. A healthy learning network must connect different perspectives. You need to follow people you disagree with. You need to read sources from different industries. The truth is usually found in the friction between different viewpoints. 2. Learning is a process of connecting specialized nodes. We used to value the polymath, the Renaissance man who knew a little bit about everything. Connectivism says those days are over. Specialization is inevitable because there is too much to know. So, we rely on others to be the specialists, and we connect to them. I don't need to know how to fix my car. I just need a strong connection to a trusted mechanic. 3. Learning may reside in non-human appliances. This is the one that ruffles feathers. Connectivists argue that we store our intelligence in our tools. When you use a calculator, the math ability is partly in your head and partly in the machine. When you use a GPS, your navigation ability resides in the satellite network. We are symbiotic with our technology. 4. Capacity to know more is more critical than what is currently known. This is the know where versus know what argument. If you apply for a job at Google, they care much less about what facts you have memorized and much more about your ability to find answers, solve new problems, and learn new systems rapidly. The state of being a learner is more valuable than the state of being learned. 5. Nurturing and maintaining connections is needed to facilitate continual learning. You have to water the garden. You can't just build a network and ignore it. You have to participate. You have to comment, share, email, and contribute. If you stop feeding the network, the nodes will disconnect from you. 6. Ability to see connections between fields, ideas, and concepts is a core skill. This is the supreme skill of the 21st century, pattern recognition. Can you see how a biological theory applies to computer security? Can you see how a trend in fashion might affect the stock market? Since we can't know everything, our value lies in our ability to cross-pollinate ideas between different silos. 7. Decision-making is itself a learning process. This is a profound insight. Choosing what to learn is a learning act. With millions of articles published every day, the ability to filter, to look at a headline and say, "This is garbage" or "This is vital," is a critical cognitive skill. The network is noisy. The learner must be the filter.